Do you think this sort of civilization clash will get to a head with this new People's Bill that's being proposed in the Western Cape Provincial Parliament? Because it seems to me the Democratic Alliance is struggling with a lot of what you're suggesting, that there's sort of a clash between what you believe in and that liberal ideology. It's sort of split in the middle down in the Democratic Alliance, that ideology of we're all just people, but we're all individuals. There's no real such thing as a community or a civilization. So do you think with the People's Bill, this will come to a head in the Western Cape?
Look, I don't want to say anything that would put the Democratic Alliance in a difficult position, okay? Because I'm not a member of the DA, and I'm not necessarily even a voter supporting the DA in elections. But I think the DA has been has done a tremendously good job in the United States, in the Western Cape. They are governing well. I will be in the Western Cape next week again. I'm looking forward to it, even though I am someone from Pretoria. It's in my blood. Pretoria is in my blood. I'm a Pretoria Afrikaner. But they are doing an excellent job. I don't think it's a civilizational thing, but I think something similar to that is at stake here. There are two ways, and that brings us closer, a little bit away from the historical discussion that we had up to now, to a more constitutional discussion. And that is, one can have a unitary view on constitutionalism, or you can have a federalist view on constitutionalism. If there can be a federal constitution or a unitary constitution. Now, the South African Constitution, as it currently stands, according to the wording, is a so-called quasi-federal constitution. It's essentially unitary, but there are some federal aspects in it, okay, in the sense that you have fairly large powers for municipalities and also for provinces. However, since the ANC is in power in 8 of the 9 provinces, 8 of the 9 provinces are kind of governed in around about the same way and are also governed in a bad way, in contrast to the Western Cape, which is governed well. Now, what the DA, as I see it, and I agree with him, and also a number of other important stakeholders and role players in South African politics, have been doing in the past year, it's a short period, it's not that long, to an increasing extent, is to say, look, we actually have a problem with the South African Constitution. We actually have a problem with it. It's too unitary. Decisions are taken only at one place in the year, that's here at the Union Buildings. Unfortunately, that's also in Pretoria. Okay? We rather suggest that there should be a variety of centers of political power. Legislative, executive, police power, and so on and so forth. And that those varieties of power should be, for example, in the Western Cape, in the KZN, and so on and so forth. But we should also not necessarily take the existing provincial boundaries and municipal boundaries of South Africa as the basis for reallocating power. We should actually revisit the whole thing. That's what I would say. Okay? Why? Well, you would in the first instance create much better governance, and in the second instance it would be much more democratic. If, for example, you have a provincial government in the Cape, or in the Western Cape, or you have a local government in Mossel Bay, or in Cape Town also, who have a lot of powers. Also policing powers relating to transport, rail transport, and so on. Also even, and I speak for myself, don't have to accept responsibility for a political party or organization, also having powers in relation to hard borders, to say X, Y, Z would be allowed here, and but A, B, C not. Why not? Why not? I mean, that's for us to decide, not for some ANC ideologue in the Union Buildings. That's a federal view. And since we are confronted now with extreme malgovernance, or very often simply the lack or the absence of governance, those federal thinking, which accounts for a large variety of identities, cultural, geographical, linguistic, and so on and so forth, which you have in South Africa, because we don't only have people here, we don't only have South Africans here. As a matter of fact, I have a little problem with the use of the word South African, because it's a very vague term. It's an abstract term. It doesn't tell you anything about the specific people you are referring to. Right? Now, the Western Cape People's Bill, I saw that bill. I think it's a very clever bill. That bill basically says, look, in the Western Cape, you have Afrikaners and Afrikaans-speaking people, you have English-speaking people, and you have Xhosas. That is how the people, broadly speaking, the people of the Western Cape look like. They are different from the rest of South Africa, and they also vote differently. All right? So precisely because of that reason, they should not be governed, more specifically ruled and dictated by from the union buildings in Tshwane. Okay? They should actually, to a large extent, be capable. They are capable, but they should also be entitled to rule themselves. That's obviously much more democratic, simply because of the fact that it means that the people living in the Western Cape can govern themselves in according to their own convictions, instead of being prescribed by somebody who really doesn't have any knowledge and who really is not in a good position to tell the Western Cape how they should be governed. So, and precisely the same should, in the final analysis, apply to every community in South Africa. And you will have some communities perfectly capable of ruling themselves and others not. And I think that, by the way, is the direction in which we're going to in South Africa. It's going to make for a tremendous amount of chaos, but in the final analysis, it's also to make for new and very inviting solutions. So, by and large, I think the Cape People's Bill and the whole federal thinking which you have around the Western Cape, and specifically about Cape Town also, I think that's a good thing. I think it's anchored in the right principled basis, where you deal with specific communities instead of with a vague South Africanism. And I think that, in the final analysis, also makes for much better democratic politics.
Get ready for our upcoming debate on the 11th of May at Huis Maree, Stellenbosch. Are you sick and tired of the same old political discussions that go nowhere? Are you looking for a lively and engaging debate that will leave you feeling inspired and informed?
I don't fear the future, because I know we're part of the future.
Our debate will include 3 largest political parties in South Africa. Each of these panelists will have the opportunity to present their arguments, provide proof for their claims, and, most exciting of all, you as an audience member will have the opportunity to ask your most burning questions during our Q&A session. So whether you are a student looking to broaden your worldview, or just a concerned citizen, join us for an evening of spirited discussion and respectful disagreement. We guarantee you'll leave feeling informed, enlightened, and excited.
And do you think, if the Western Cape governments continues to continues to ask for power and is rejected by a person like Bekele, who just says basically, "Gaan vlieg in jou moeren," should the Western Cape take the initiative and just start usurping power?
Look, I think the kind of phenomenon that you are referring to, where the Western Cape might simply usurp, to use that strong word, power, I think that is a kind of phenomenon which is generally taking place in South Africa. People started generating their own electrical power long before it was allowed by government. People starting looking after their own roads, looking after their own security, long before it was realized by government. there was a postnet and various other institutions, private institutions, who took over the responsibilities of the post office. Even though there's a law that says that the post office has a monopoly on the work that they do, but they don't do their work anymore. They cannot. It's a pity. I can remember when I was a child, the post office is an excellently functioning institution, but it's not like that anymore, not at all. So those things have just been taken over, regardless of what the law might say. You know, the law has simply fallen by the wayside. I think we had a previous discussion about my previous book, No Supreme Constitution, in which I referred to lapsed law and substituting law. This is precisely what you have here. And also, it also applies to policing powers. Yes, makes it difficult because you have to finance it yourself. You can't use, you don't get the funds that you are actually entitled to from the national government to actually do it. That's a problem to be attended to, I should say. It is going to be attended to. There's no question about that. But Becky Sele saying, no, go to hell, I'm not giving these powers. That in the final analysis will be of no moment. It's just going to take place.
Well, great. I see I've taken up much more of your time than I should have. This has been really amazing. This has been diving into history is always so optimistic in a certain sense. And I really love these conversations. Is there anything you want to add before we conclude? Anything you want to say?
I think we've already used something like 1 hour and 10 minutes now. What I want to say is, let me say two things. Firstly, we spoke a lot about Western civilization. I think Western civilization is under tremendous pressure worldwide. Well, not worldwide, wherever Western civilization is, has a footprint. I think Western civilization is under most stress in South Africa. There's no question about that. But what has been happening is that people subscribing to and living according to Western civilization in South Africa are proving themselves to be particularly capable of dealing with the kind of challenges that we are dealing with, and also capable of providing an indispensable contribution towards the crisis of Western civilization all over the world, regarding notwithstanding the fact that we are in fact small in number. I think we are in a very good position, and that we are already making a contribution not only towards catering for our own issues, our own problems and challenges, but also to the challenges of Western civilization largely.
Yeah, awesome. Well, yeah, this is just a drop in what do you call it? Dis die trog in die grafiek en ons skiet nou weer reg op. That's what's going to happen in the future. That it's always darkest before the dawn. So yeah, thank you so much, Koos. This has been very interesting. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.